Okay, welcome everybody. Tom Benti Media Podcast. I have a really cool and special guest here today, Mr. Ibn Wallace, a former student of mine at Montclair State University. I taught Ibn in my transmedia projects class back in, I think, the winter, spring of 2018. He was really a great student, very passionate about media and transmedia and virtual reality and entrepreneurship as well. Just an overall really a nice guy too, and very he just he presented things in a way that I felt was very modern and current, and he was very up on the times, which I thought was really cool. And he linked up with me on LinkedIn just a few days ago, saying that he had this new book that he was promoting on Amazon, and I ordered a copy. I didn't get a chance to read it yet. It should get to my house fairly soon. But the story behind it, which Ibn is going to talk about in terms of the poems, and it relates to his fiance and his upcoming marriage, which is awesome. And I'm really excited to hear about the process, the book, and also how he got it on Amazon at such a young age, which I think is really cool too. So Ibn, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the book and the ideas and the inspiration behind it?
No worries. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I greatly appreciate the time and consideration you take into myself and to my brand. So my name is Ibn Wallace. I'm a graduate of Montclair State University. And this is my first book launch. And I'm really excited for the opportunity I give to help people, through my writings and through my poems, and even from an entrepreneurial journey in itself. The first thing I would say is, always have faith. That's the first step. You have to have faith in anything you do for it to succeed and work. And with this book particularly, it took a lot of faith and a lot of courage because my fiance and I, this was our first Christmas, so it was our first Christmas together. So it had to be something special, for the both of us. It had to be like my gift to her had to be something that truly expressed the way I felt about her. And it had to be something that would, be very different than just a diamond earring or, diamond earrings or something that was, a regular gift. I want to do something from my heart. And we were on a trip in Florida together, and I actually talked to her brother about what I should get her. And I told him the first thing that came to my mind was like, I always wanted to launch a book. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to write her a book. And he just like, I think that's a great idea. I'm pretty sure she'd love it. And I was like, okay, the first thing is, where do I find a title? So I wanted to be extremely original. I wanted to be so original that, no one else can take it. And I actually have a piece of the original, what came from that original aspect right here. She wrote in my birthday card for my birthday, which is October 15th. She said, I love you with the heat of 1,000 suns. And I have that here. This is the card that she actually wrote to me. So you can see that there. And, with that birthday card, that's what inspired me to write that book, Heat of 1,000 Suns, because I thought that was a great title. And as you can see on Amazon, I made her an author just because, from that card and from what she wrote in the card, I gave her the credit for, naming the book, which I thought was really interactive and really creative. So that's where that started, just taking small steps. So, I immediately started writing. I was writing little poems in my notes in my iPhone. I've always wanted to launch a book since I was in high school, but I thought it was such a prolonged, and tedious, confusing project that would take me years to do. And I needed, at least $10,000 to launch a book. That was what I thought. And I didn't have $10,000 at the time. We were in Florida, I think in November, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, we were in Florida in November. So Christmas was right around the corner. So I just had the faith to do it. And earlier in 2020, some of my writings got published through someone else that I worked with, one of my mentors. He published my writing through one of his books that he launched. So I connected with him a little bit to get a little information of how he did it. And he didn't really give me the straightforward answer, but I had to just do a lot more digging and figure out how I can get it done before Christmas. So every single day, I was doing as much as I could, getting up as early as possible, staying up late as possible, to write these poems out. And I accumulated up to, I believe, 56 poems in there. So yeah, there's about 56 poems in there that I wrote. And, I was working really diligently to do so. So how I found out about how to actually get it on Amazon and publish it was because, for one, since I'm an entrepreneur, I learned a little bit about self-publishing through the Feliciano School of Business when I was there at Montclair State. I read a book by Ryan Holiday called Growth Hacker Marketing that spoke to self-publishing a little bit and spoke to how you can launch books and make money residually without doing too much work. And you can even get other people to write it for you. However, I wasn't really taking that route. So I just didn't know the process was so easy, and I'm not really a fan of the word easy, but I didn't know this process was so easy. It did take a lot of work due to the deadline, but, since I consider myself a high octane writer, I can crunch those poems out, crunch those hybrid writings is also what I like to call them out, as fast as I possibly can. So with getting it on Amazon, Amazon has a complete service called, KDP, which is a self-publishing service. And fortunately enough, since I have my degree in PR, I spent a lot of time learning graphic design. I spent a lot of time learning writing structure, learning writing for the media, marketing, of course, your class, transmedia, learning how people interact with things, trying to create an experience. Cultivating an experience is one of the main things that separates the good from the great. And, fortunately, I had a lot of experience that allowed me to make the project very condensed and able to launch in a shorter time than a regular person would. So for instance, as you see the cover here, I'll show you guys. As you see the cover here, sorry, is that a good picture?
It's a little hard to see. It's kind of blown out.
Oh, my apologies.
It's okay.
Oh, well, as you guys see my cover from the link, I actually designed the cover. So I did everything A to Z. I designed the cover, the front cover, I designed the back cover. I literally everything A to Z. The only thing, so if you look at the project as like 100% pie, the only thing I didn't do was editing and, I edited a lot of it, but it's just more so like the formatting for the platform. So with KDP self-publishing, everything has to be a certain way in terms of, that's compatible with the platform. And when you update, you can't have PNG files. It can't be picture files. It has to be certain files. So it has to be typically in docs. A lot of that stuff I outsourced for, which I use a source called Fiverr.com. Everyone should know about Fiverr.com because Fiverr.com is a great source for people who are in business and who may have a lot of projects going on but don't really have the time, but they do have the money to leverage someone to help them, meet their deadline. So I use Fiverr.com to help someone to get me a little help to format the book for the service. So I wrote everything out, edited everything out, designed the front and back cover, got everything, underway. And then I just had someone format it and submit it for me. I gave him my password. He just formatted and submitted, which was great. And you wouldn't believe the price I paid for it, $25 for someone to do that, which was amazing. And the book was uploaded and ready to be purchased in 72 hours. So I paid $25 and it was ready to be uploaded in 72 hours. And I could have did the formatting and everything myself, but, it's just a little hard when you want to make things a surprise. My case is a little different. My book was a complete surprise to my fiance. That was my gift to her, for Christmas. She didn't open a regular gift. I was just holding my iPad and I was just reading her, the poems that I wrote to her in our book. And then once she finally touched the physical copy, I'm sorry guys, I'm waiting for my physical copies to come in. I have like a lot of them coming. So once she touched a physical copy, she was really excited because it was a completely different experience than we've ever had. And she's on the cover as well with me. And it's funny, as we relate to your class, one of your professors actually taught us about how he influenced the vision of Pandora for the movie Avatar. and how he helped that company build Pandora. And if you actually look on our cover, that's, my fiance and I actually standing in Disney World looking at Pandora. So I think that's an awesome connection. And when we were in Disney World, I contacted you on LinkedIn and told you, I'm like, I can't believe Pandora. It's astonishing. It was a great experience. We literally rode Avatar twice because we thought it was just such a great ride. And, I was explaining to our family, my fiance's, parents and her brothers and cousins, like, my professor knows the guy who essentially influenced this entire experience. But it looked kind of like, no way, like, it kind of looked like a stretch, like, not like I was lying, but kind of like a stretch, like, what, really? Like, we're at Disney. I've been like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, guys, seriously, like, he spoke in our class, like, he came to our class consistently. But it was, that's why I'm really happy we're doing the podcast, because, if you look on the cover of the book, we're actually standing in front of Pandora. And,
it just comes full circle, I guess.
Everything came full circle. Everything came full circle. So
yeah. So Ibn's talking about one of my professors at Brooklyn College. I have an MFA in film from Brooklyn College, the Fierstein Graduate School of Cinema. And one of my professors is Jeff Gomez, who's the transmedia guru, basically kind of started transmedia way back when. And he has worked, among others, with James Cameron in Avatar. And he was a big part of creating that story world. So I'm glad Ibn was so impressed with Professor Gomez's speeches and how he worked with Cameron and how everything came together for Avatar. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it was everything he spoke to, and that's why I'm a big believer in faith and believer in God, because it's like that, like everything came full circle, even, and just patience. Learning about that in 2018. And then taking the steps slow, always keeping transmedia back in the back of my mind and understanding what it feels like. And then coming to 2020, being in Florida with my fiance, and I'm on the ride and I'm like, this is everything we learned about the smells, the seven senses, like everything was like, oh, this is exactly what I learned about years ago in school. So, that, tying it all the way back to the book, I thought that was, it really blew me away. And then, I was trying to find a way to, even with my cover, create this, this experience. And I'm like, no, it has to be us staring at Pandora, because it speaks to, our journey, together in our relationship. So yeah, that's, did I cover everything from about Amazon or?
Yeah, I think so. It sounds like they have a platform that you can reach. I'm sure this all information's via Google, so you can look how to basically self-publish. And I think what you mentioned about Fiverr and finding an individual who can help you with that process for relatively cheap or very cheap is great. But let's talk a little bit more about the book itself. So is it basically just love poems to your fiance? What are the contents of these poems? And maybe you can, if you don't want to read a poem, that would be cool if you read a little bit of a poem. Just give us some inspiration behind it and where you got that inspiration from.
So the poem itself, the book itself is, a lot of it is poems, but some of it is also hybrid writing. So a little bit about my fiance and I, we actually went to high school together, but didn't know each other. So some of the poems that, like the first, I think maybe 20 poems are, a lot of love poems, but then some of them are a little bit about my life as well, and some things that I went through that were like, she didn't know me during the time. And even though I was in high school, it was like her opportunity to be, paint on the wall, as we're in the same building, we're in the same facility, but we have no awareness of each other at all. So I speak a little bit about how I got into poetry. I was in a small learning community in high school called Center for Social Justice. And the acronym for that in the book is CSJ. So I was in CSJ, and we studied poetry and literary devices very rigorously. So different literary devices, from, if you ever heard of the Canterbury Tales, the Minister's Black Veil, things like, different things like anti-transcendentalism, and, just different things that like inspired me to write in it. And we didn't know each other during those times. So I would tell different stories about, my life, and different stories that, where she can just be paint on the wall, because we didn't know each other during the time. So that, and I didn't really get too much into different things like sports and stuff like that. But that, of course comes with, future projects. So yeah, I can read, this poem is called Message in a Bottle. This is about my fiance and I. We were actually, for my 24th birthday, I was on a business trip and she came to visit me in Philadelphia. And we went to a restaurant called Mashulu, which is a restaurant and it's on a boat. And it's really beautiful. It's a great experience. And it was just like one of the most perfect nights I've ever had. So it's called Message in a Bottle. So it goes, it was my 24th, dinner on a boat. Who knew a restaurant could float? Felt seasick for a minute, found my balance and bread we broke. Daydreamed about the day I touched a million and invested it in your paint strokes. Imagination by sunshine paintings in museums across the globe. Put ink in a note, put it in a bottle, sailed it down the river so it wouldn't soak. I can't wait for Christmas so you can read what I wrote. So that poem, the thing about when I write poetry, every word typically has a meaning. So her nickname is Sunshine, and we actually just started our business together called Imagination by Sunshine because my fiance, she's a world-class painter. She, like, not to put pressure on her, but like she's like my favorite painter. She paints so good. So we just started our business together with her paintings. So in this poem I speak to that. I want to, once I make the the amount of money that where I feel successful, I can't wait to pour it into her brand so we can put her paintings in museums all over the world. So yeah, that's
So a lot of the poetry relates to not only what you've experienced thus far in the relationship, but also what you hope to experience in the future, kind of looking ahead and saying, hey, these are the things that we can do together throughout our lives. Like, these are our goals, which I think is really interesting, is that you're foreshadowing this great life together and really just kind of putting the broad strokes on the different points that you want to hit and the different goals that you want to hit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. And that's why I love to write, because I can like almost touch and see, the future when I put, pen to the pad. And I like to write a lot of stuff actually like pen and paper, because it's a different experience than just typing it on the phone. And it's more of an emotional appeal. So yeah, that's probably one of my favorite poems in the book as well. And I can read her favorite poem, which is Crawl to Heaven. One second. One second. Yeah, and it's available on Kindle as well. I actually like it on Kindle because if you're on a train or if you're on a bus or if you're traveling anywhere in the world, you can just, write on your phone. Whereas to a book, sometimes, like, it depends. I've heard a lot of people say they like the physical copy more. But I like Kindle because it has a really clean look, a really clean, like, user interface. So yeah, so this one's called Crawl to Heaven. And this is, I would say together, this is probably my favorite one. It's definitely hers. So I go, my lucky lefty, painting as an expression, grave meets depression, death to the stressing, a new life with a blessing, happiness possession, knuckles bloody on our crawl to heaven. So that one, we're both left-handed. So, and I think that's really like the coolest thing in the world. We're both, because you don't really find too many people that are left-handed. And, my fiance are both left-handed, and she's a painter and I'm a writer. So I think that's the coolest thing. That's where, I spoke to that a lot. Like I said, I use, her painting in here. So making, painting as an expression. So that's one of her biggest forms of expression. She paints. And so, yeah. And then the whole thing is just about our pursuit to heaven. We're both believers in Jesus. We're both believers in God. So it's just our pursuit to heaven. And, it's going to be tough, as we walk, but we believe that, we're still going to get there. That's why it's like knuckles bloody. So, yeah.
Yeah, I could see. So it's a lot of like struggle through hardships, but we're in this together. We're going to learn, we're going to grow, we're going to strive to keep on going and do better.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. So yeah, that's what that one was really about. But I can't wait to write more, because I have so many more to come. And there's different ones that are really different and really creative. Like even this is another one. It's called Cloud Surf. I really like this one as well. And this was the one I actually wrote about. I came up with this one. We were actually on the Avatar ride, So this was before, I don't think I even knew I was writing a book to her yet. But I just remember us being on the Avatar ride, and this is how I came up with the idea. It's called Cloud Surf. So can't fathom living life without passion, cultivate an atom. Into the sunset we ride dragons, speak in sarcasm, only love you with enthusiasm. So if you when you take a chance to go to Pandora, the Avatar ride in Disney, and you see the new Avatar ride, and you're literally taking that. It's an experience that you can't really speak to, but it's like they're not called dragons; they're called banshees, if I'm not mistaken. In the Avatar world, I think they're called banshees, if I'm not mistaken. And when you're on a banshee and you're literally riding it, of course, to a person who doesn't know about Avatar, they would think it's a dragon. So that's kind of how I came up with that concept. But I just was imagining my fiance like actually riding, a banshee or riding a dragon in real life, and going through the clouds, and just really taking that imagination appeal. So yeah, that's how, and that was probably one of my favorite ones too, Cloud Surf. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, well, that's really cool stuff. It sounds like this is a great book. I mean, really for anybody, but particularly for someone if you're about to get married and you're looking towards the future together. This really outlines a great structure and really creative way of looking ahead at the future marriage.
For sure. Yeah, it definitely does. And then from an entrepreneurial experience that I had to explain to a lot of my friends, Amazon does everything for you in terms of delivery to the home, which is like it's really impeccable, because if you think about it as a writer, especially from an entrepreneurship perspective and like a business perspective, you got to find ways to cut costs, and you got to find ways to save money for your business, so you can reinvest that money back into your business. And Amazon saves you so much money as an author, because I don't have to deal with the heavy lifting of actually going to the post office and, sending my books out to different, people who buy it, which would take away from those sales. The only thing with Amazon is they take 30% of each sale, that's awesome in terms of a partnership. That's awesome because not only does that 30% do all the heavy lifting, that 30% isn't really that much in terms of an overall sell. So, for the business people and entrepreneurial people who want to be authors, work with them, work with Amazon, because the KDP platform is outstanding. And I think that's the best part. You don't have to actually send it out, which would take away from money. That would take away. You don't have to print you don't have to print the book yourself or find someone to print it for you and pay them a, astronomical fee. It's just making sure that, you have the skills to, design your cover and make sure everything is formatted correctly how you want. And this can be in any genre. This is just a genre I chose, So yeah.
Cool. So what's next, Ibn? What's next for you? You got this great book coming out, but I know you have a ton of ideas. What's next? What's in the pipeline?
There's a few things next. Of course, I'll be launching. Like my goal is to launch 100 books. That's really my goal. So it's a big goal, but I think I should definitely be able to knock that out the park. Especially with their platform. I'm going to be writing, rigorously for the next, until I'm like, as long as I'm here, I'm going to be writing as much as I possibly can. So that's my, one of my goals. Of course.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, let me stop you there for a second, because I'm a writer too. And I one of the things that I've always said, and I'll continue to say, is that writing, out of all the creative aspects of being a filmmaker or an actor or a producer, writing, I feel, is the hardest, because it really requires a lot of discipline. And a lot of people can have a point of view and bring that point of view. If you're a filmmaker like myself, you can bring it to a set. You can bestow that point of view on the actors, etc. A lot of people can put the pieces together as producers. Not to say there's no skill or there's no dedication that goes into that. But what I found is that there's very few people that actually can sit down and write a story, whether it be a screenplay or a story or a poem. So how do you go about writing? How do you include it in your daily routine? What's your process like?
Well, I think it's really just how, God makes room for my gift. Like I can like some people, they have to find inspiration. You know, some people have to like go and seek inspiration to, you know, get things off. I can literally walk outside and I can smell something. Like I can smell inspiration. It doesn't take a lot for me to be motivated or to be inspired, because if you look at it, even from a sports perspective, some people, they hate practice. You know, some people don't ever like to go to practice. They just want to play for the game. But it's just like, if you look at that from a writing perspective, I love practice. It's my favorite thing. It's like, because I don't really look at it as practice. I look at it as doing what I love. So to go about it, it's just, I can literally find inspiration from anything. You know, past stories, future stories, subconscious things that don't even make sense. I can literally find inspiration from shapes, you know, to write. Um, and as you even read in the description, I speak a little bit to that, you know, with my father. He had, like growing up, he would have so many notebooks of just, you know, different songs he would write and different, you know, things he would write. So I would always see those scribbles, and I would, you know, of course, every son wants to replicate what their father does. I would see those little scribbles and, you know, create my own version of it. So like, I know I'm like, inside of me, I'm just so fulfilled with, you know, books, that it's just, sometimes it's just, you know, it doesn't take a lot for me to be inspired. So to go about the writing process, it's literally, I can be anywhere. Like sometimes I could be, you know, drive. I think the hardest thing for me, to be completely transparent, is when I'm driving, because when I'm driving, that's when I get the best content. Like that's when I get hit with the best content. I'm driving, and I just, you know, it formulates in my head, and I'll have a whole stanza, and I can't write it down. So that's probably like my biggest thing, is like, I'll have a whole stanza in my head. I'll have a whole, you know, I'll have, you know, sometimes whole stories in my head, but I just can't write it down because I'm driving. But you know, when
Yeah,
I'm
you
not,
know, it's funny you mentioned that, because they say that driving brings the most creative inspiration in terms of writing.
I didn't know that.
And
I did.
yeah, I remember. And the reason I know this is because Willie Nelson, the folk rock singer, was on Howard Stern, and he talked about how he gets his inspiration. And a lot of times, like, if he's struggling to create some music or to create some lyrics, he'll just go for a drive. And he said that they have studies that show that you really become creative and inspired just by driving. I love to drive myself, and that's one of the ways that I not only let off steam, but I also am creatively inspired and think of ideas. But the challenge, like you said, is to really bring those ideas in and to somehow write them down, so you remember them for, you know, when you start to write. Just like you want to remember your dreams, but sometimes they're hard to remember because you forget. But yeah, that's cool. So it sounds like you're just living in a life where you're always inspired. You're always looking for creativity. You're always looking for different things to talk about and to create and to write. And I think that's just a great attitude about it. So it doesn't sound like you set, well, you know, I'm going to write every day from like 4 to 6 p.m. It's just like all times you're on fire, and,
Yeah.
you know, you're ready to go at any time.
Yeah, it's like the greatest. It, of course, some people would say like, oh, it's a gift and a curse. But like, I love that gift, because like sometimes it gets annoying, because I could literally be in a meeting, and it'll just be, you know, tugging at my heart to where it's like, okay, I have to write this down. Like if I don't, like, you know, my college coach used to always say, you know, the pain of discipline, or the pain of disappointment after regret. I never want to feel that disappointment from not being disciplined. So it's like, you know, I'll take 2 seconds to just go to my notes and just, you know, write it all out. And, you know, sometimes it may not even turn to anything, you know, but it's just like, as long as I have it down. So like, I'm telling you, I could be walking and I get inspired, but I think the biggest thing for me is just making sure I get it down, you know, on paper. On notes is probably my best friend in my phone. You know, I go to notes, or even docs. Docs is also big. I'm really big on docs. I'll literally just go to docs and start writing some stuff down, and, you know, finding different ways to, you know, just, you know, keep my content there. But I did find out there were a few apps that, you know, are good, that have kind of communities. I haven't tapped into them yet, because I thought I could maybe create one that that are for people that feel the way I feel about writing, you know, when they just get inspired and it's just like, oh, here's a poem, you know, really fast and just, you know, launch it. So I haven't got into any apps, but I think that's the biggest thing for me, that process where it's just like, I could be, you know, walking down the street or petting a dog or, you know, literally anything, even, you know, just typing on my keyboard and hearing the sound. And it's like, oh, wow. Like I have a poem from that. Um, so
But yeah, you know, I think you speak to a larger point too, that like, you know, we're artists. So this is a life.
yeah.
This is not just an occupation. Like, you know, this is something that we're living and breathing 24/7. So we have to have that mindset when we're approaching our work, which is our life's work. It's
Mm,
not just about like, you know, thinking something as laborious. It's about really creating this part of our life and expressing a big part of who we are to the world,
mm,
and not thinking of it as a challenge or an obstacle, but thinking of it as like, you know, this is a form of expression. This is who I am. This is what keeps me going every day, is that I have this opportunity. And it sounds like you have a great mindset, a motivated mindset, where you see a lot of people, they want to get into the arts, they want to have a creative endeavor, they want to do something, you know, like in film or in music, but they're not approaching it from the standpoint of like a lifestyle. Like,
mm.
this is who we are. This is our life. Like, we have to express this. This is part of our self-expression.
Yeah. And like, you wouldn't believe, like, just for example, yesterday alone, you won't believe how many poems I wrote yesterday. Like, like I literally yesterday, I wrote 29 poems. Like yesterday alone, 29.
Now, is your writing strictly poetry, or do you do, like, I know you said hybrid writing, but do you do like long form? Do you want to write a book? Do you want to write a screenplay, or is it mostly, do you want
Yeah.
to continue with poetry?
Well, that's the thing. I think, you know, like, you know, like I told you, I'm a big believer. And I can, if you don't mind, it's like one of the scriptures is like, you know, despise not the start of small beginnings. You know, I studied a lot of Spike Lee when I was a kid, like a lot, like a little bit too much Spike Lee.
What's your favorite Spike Lee film?
Um, you probably don't even know it. It's called Clockers.
I know it, but I haven't seen that one. But I'm a big Spike Lee fan. I like a lot of his work. Did you see
Yeah,
the new one on Netflix, The Five Bloods?
yeah, I
That
saw
was good. That was
that was
very
really
good.
good.
Malcolm X, I think, is a masterpiece.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah. And then his first one, She's Gotta Have It, I thought was amazing. And then Do the Right Thing, was
Yeah,
another masterpiece. Not, I'm going to go on, but Jungle Fever was
yeah.
phenomenal.
Jungle Fever.
I mean, his work is top notch.
Yeah, it's you know, I think, yeah, that's Clockers is definitely my favorite. And then I don't know why the one is slipping my head with Denzel Washington when he's the trumpet player. That one's probably my second. I don't know why the title just slipped me, but that's probably my second one with Denzel Washington. You know, he's a trumpet
I didn't
player.
see that one. I didn't see
Yeah,
that one.
it's a really good song in that movie called Harlem Blues. So that movie, and then my third favorite is probably it's probably a tie between Do the Right Thing and you know, She's Gotta Have It. But I really love I like, but that's what I'm saying, the small beginnings. Like I study so much Spike Lee. Like in high school, I even tried to, you know, write a few things film wise, but I just wasn't really too sure. It just, I kept, you know, my love for poetry was so strong. I just wrote so many books of like so many notebooks full of poetry that I wasn't sure how to turn it into a film or anything yet. But I still work, you know, towards, you know, films. And you know, I met a few different people in the industry to learn a little bit about it. I even have my own camera, so I shot like a lot of stuff and just cut it up and just, you know, even editing some different things. But, you know, right now it's just like poetry and hybrid writing. And hybrid writing is just, you know, your creative style, just kind of like a mashup. Um, like I even have like a few funky ones where they don't even make sense. It's just like me just, you know, playing around with words and using different things to, you know, bring about colors and imaginations to people's minds.
Yeah, I mean, writing is rewriting. So I mean, that's
Yeah.
where it starts. Very little structure, just an idea. Like all the films that I've written, they
Mhm.
just start from a basic idea, and then the process comes in and the discipline comes in, because everybody has ideas, but not everybody can translate that idea into something viable.
Mhm.
Is to not only remembering it, writing it down, and then taking that idea and working it over and over and over again. And then you have like a basic idea of a story. And then you take that basic idea of a story and you expand on it. And you have a generally 3 acts and so forth and so on. So writing is just writing and writing and writing, because we all have ideas, but where the artistry comes in is where we take those ideas, we structure it, we formulate it, and we make it into something that really responds to people and that they can find emotionally appealing and relate to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the best thing in the world, because like when I get a chance to write, like I get so excited. Like it doesn't even matter. Like even in church, like I take so many notes because I just love to write so much. And I think that's where a lot of that starts from, just, just taking so many notes and just, it's like a feeling inside me when I get a chance to do it. Even at work, I take notes. Like if my manager is talking, like I'm just taking notes. It doesn't even matter what he's talking about. I'm still going to take as many notes as possible, because I love the process of, starting at a blank page and then just going from top to bottom and then to the next page, to the next. It just, so yeah, I get really excited about it. And then reading as well. And one of my, sorry to, keep going, but one of my biggest missions is to, really get children and kids to, kind of adopt the life of, like the life of, writing becoming your left hand, and then reading becoming your right hand, opposed to, video games being your left hand and social media being your right hand. Because when you kind of like, write and read, and that's your left, right punch, like your life changes. Like you can see things a lot different. You can realize that, like money is of value, but when you find something that truly, triggers that inspiration every time you wake up, that is like, it's worth more than money. And I think a lot of kids can find that purpose and that purpose faster if they, take to reading and writing. They may find it in video games and social, but I just don't think so. Because it just feels like, it doesn't really, if you're going to do that, if you're going to take that stance as a kid or as a child or a teenager, then take that from a composing perspective. Don't take it from, an end user perspective. So yeah, I think that'll be, the coolest thing, if I can just get more kids to, to follow that. And, I hope in the future I can really, do some, some virtual classes with kids, and do some virtual classes with, with teens, where they can literally take my class to learn how to, write certain styles unorthodoxly, though. Not like, yeah, we're going to follow, what a sonnet is, what this is, what that is, but really just, how do you feel? Did you like, how do you feel? What triggered this, this piece? And I'm not going to take the stance as a, as a teacher, as a learner from them, but like, okay, this is how you felt. It's fine. You're allowed to feel that way. I think I've, in grade school, I learned too much of people trying to structure, especially in the realm of writing. Of course, you have your formats and different ways you do things, but, when I get a chance to teach kids and teach children, I'm going to let them, have a disciplined freedom, So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why a lot of people get turned off, or they view writing as a struggle, is because of the structure and format. Now, that's a big part of it, but it starts with just the free write, like we were talking about. So people should understand that, like especially younger people's, that's, just having ideas and just using those ideas and working with them is a big part of the process. And you shouldn't be scared of it because of, like you were saying, sonnets and all the different structural elements that take some time to learn and progress. Yeah. But yeah, man, this is awesome, man. I'm really inspired by you. And I have to ask, as we're closing up here, how do you stay, you're a young man, you're only what, 25, 24? 24 years old. I mean, I was not nearly as mature as you are at 24. I'm almost 40, and I think you're more mature than I am. But how do you stay so grounded, especially as a young man, and like, you're not caught up. It seems like, you're just so, you're not caught up in nonsense. Like you just have such a clear vision for yourself in the future. Yeah. And you're just so well-rounded. At a young age, when a lot of your peers are, they're probably, as I, you get caught up in going to bars and clubbing and all this nonsense. Like, how do you stay so focused and so grounded?
Yeah, it's easily my faith. Like it's that simple. It's just my faith, you know. That's definitely the biggest thing. Like just my faith in God, and you know, just following that works for me. Um, you know, my faith in God, and just making sure that you know making sure that I'm always living my life with integrity and sacrifice. You know, that's the biggest thing for me. You know, and it grounds me and it keeps me grounded. And that's how I met my fiance, you know, my future wife. You know, just being grounded in my faith, and having that never say die attitude. You know, I was never really interested in the party life. You know, the clubbing and stuff like that. I just felt like that wasn't, at least for me, I just felt like, and still do, like it's not, I just won't reach my goal if I go down that path. Or so it's just like my faith really keeps me grounded, and it helps me like kind of develop as a man, because I want to impact so many people. Like if I want to impact all these people and give them the same way of faith, the only way I can really do that is if I stay grounded and I stay focused, and I just have my steps ordered. So that's really what it is. Like it's no secret. It's just my faith.
Gotcha, man. That's great. I'm really inspired by you. You were a great student. I'm so glad that you're doing all this great work now that you've graduated. Wish you nothing but the best. You're gonna have to come back on periodically because you have so much going on. I can't wait to check out your book. But this was really, really a special interview, and thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you so much.